So welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and also share the screen, and we can explore this lecture 236 of the Pathwork Lectures called The Superstition of Pessimism. And this was delivered on December 3rd, 1975. And I chose this partly because I was really feeling like for the last 2 months, right, the kind of a very deep intensity of sort of the squeeze of the darkness of the, whoops, we lost Melanie somehow. The squeeze and the darkness of the times, and it just felt like things were very heavy and pessimistic as well. And I could just watch myself sort of falling into my own sort of negative power of the word, right? And this is partly how it's connected. So if we are, creating life and our experience, then this is kind of looking at this dynamic that often is unconscious in us, but is useful to see in these times. So we'll go ahead, and for those that are new, again, welcome. I start reading. Feel free to break in at any time. I'll try to pause, as well, and give people time to have comments or questions. So we'll just kind of go through this lecture. So it says, greetings and blessings, my beloved friends. You are bathed in the love of God, in the Christ force that awakens in your innermost being. This love and strength reaches into your very being. You can feel it if you open your inner gaze and your inner hearing to the sound and the beauty and the aliveness of this new force that is awakening all over the universe. So this is part of, what it felt like, we were in this dark tunnel passage, difficulty. And for, everybody, we're going through different things at different times, right? So that was part of my journey. But, at the same time, I'm more and more aware, and it helps a lot, that there is this sort of inner beauty and aliveness and this new force that you can feel. And, sometimes I'm sort of doom scrolling through the news, but I'm also looking for those breakthroughs, those, possible, scientific, technological things that might help us, might help us go forward, as well as some of the understanding, and the sort of mythic understanding of our times. So, we're here really walking a soul journey, and each of our souls is here incarnate during this particular time in our life and in this world, in this time of history. And we seem to be undergoing a very powerful and profound kind of initiatory, I guess you would even say, maybe even apocalyptic time, in the sense that apocalypse really does mean revealing, right? Pulling the covers back. Everything is out in the open and seen. And so part of, I think, what is happening, and, we didn't realize maybe, or there's some shock, or there was some, place of where we were hoping that, that we were further along, or whatever, but, here we are. And it feels like almost deja vu, and in many ways I never thought we could even be facing a nuclear war again, but having gone through the 60s and all of that, but who knows. But this is interesting because, it plays off of all of our fears. It plays, we had this huge solar flare right before the 2022 thing, that if it had been actually the side of the sun that faced the earth, it would have really fried our system. So it was this grace where this huge, it was like, they said, I don't know how you work this, but they said it was like 29 on a scale from 1 to 10, this huge solar mass ejection that was ejected away from the planet instead of towards it. And they said the last time something really big like that was in 1800s. And it really did, like it was the beginning of the telegraph lines and that kind of thing everywhere. And I said that they caught on fire everywhere. So I don't know. But, there's just, we have to kind of walk into this world, not looking to, anything that is human, that can, be our ultimate protection, right? We have to find life and faith and everything that we need in these times, beyond all of the old things that we used to put our security into. So there's a lot of shaking. And so, it's good to remember, in the midst of this, that is the light, it is the Christ force that is actually, coming into the earth, revealing all of this, causing some of this shaking. And so anyway, let's go further into the lecture. You have journeyed into your inner being on this path. And this lecture was delivered, down the road in the lectures series. It's 236 out of 258. So, people have been following this work, and these lectures have been being shared, and people have been doing this work following this. So the guide is addressing, people that have been working with this material. He says, you've become aware of many obstructions and negativity that you did not know existed. Only as you know them do you also make the connection with these negative attitudes that you create negative experience. Tonight, I wish to give you a new realization about a special kind of attitude that I will call the superstition of pessimism. Once it is conscious, it will aid you tremendously in eliminating further obstructions to realizing your divine being. So is everybody with us? It looks like somebody dropped off, but anyway. So any comments so far? So he says, when you reach a certain level of awareness, you'll come across an attitude that says, if I believe in the positive, I will be disappointed. And I might chase it away by my very belief in it. It's like, if I hope for it, right? I might get disappointed, and it might be, because I'm putting too much stock in it or something. So if I don't, hope too much or believe in it, then I won't drive it away. So he said, it's like, we might be smarter to believe that nothing good can happen, that, we can't really change or grow out of obstructions, right? And so this is a game, a kind of deliberate but destructive playfulness, which is based on nothing but superstition. Does that make sense? It's like, there's some part of us, wants to believe that we're stuck right where we are and change isn't possible, and the worst that we, sort of secretly expect is really all that we can ever have. Does that seem familiar to anybody here?
Hi, everybody. Sorry I was a little late. As I was reading this lecture, I was like, do I do this? Is this, I'm not anywhere close to the 200s in the lecture series. So do I do this? But I think I do. I think it's such a natural habit that I don't even realize I'm doing it. So yeah, I think I can recognize it in myself.
Yeah. And I mean, different people have different, tendencies more, but I think certainly, especially when things are difficult, or we're, in a struggle, or we're kind of, going through I mean, and for me, like I was aware, so kind of my least favorite thing in the world is dealing with things like taxes and structure and legal, and, trying to get everything in my life into somebody else's little boxes. and then somehow, it seems like there's, kind of different ideas about which boxes it should go in, and somehow it doesn't matter anyway, but my brain goes, crazy trying to figure out exactly how these boxes are supposed to work. And, I actually, had struggled with this for a long time. And I finally am at a place where I think I can, I actually realized, oh, I can hire somebody to work with this for me now, which I hadn't been really able to do before. So but I was in this real struggle with it in the beginning, thinking I was going to have to take this on, and looking at, several months of sitting behind the computer trying to figure this out. And I was just not a happy camper, and I was not happy about anything in that place. And then I was sort of, watching, all of this, thing happening with Russia, and all of the, the kinds of doom scrolling, that we can get into, and so I was watching myself in a kind of dark place. And so I would actually in the morning have to get up and clear myself and kind of go into the upper room, right, to hold whatever was happening, to, just in general, in the energy of and the mood. And sometimes, I'm kind of mediumistic, so sometimes I'm just picking up, from the rest of the world too. And especially if I go into a lower vibrational state, right, everything just kind of gloms on. And so I could just feel, like my life force, was negative or hard to, you know, feel, positive about things. And so that's one example. I think we all do it to some degree. We may not be so aware that the thought behind it is kind of our fear of disappointment, right? But you might try to think of something that you really want in life, right? Some desire or longing, or, something that, has been a goal, or something that you've wanted, right? And then, it might come up, like if you really, really let yourself want it fully, or, believe that it might happen, could you really imagine that it might happen, and see, if maybe there isn't this kind of denial a little bit, or this fear of sort of a superstitious belief that if you really let yourself want it fully, you might not get it. So is that making sense?
It's making sense to me. Is it also related or similar to particularly when I was younger, and I still think do it a bit, is when I get really too excited about something, I will hold it down for fear that the opposite is going to come.
Yeah, good. And in a way, if you just feel sort of that tendency energetically, right, so, there's a natural, and, maybe we hold it down also because, there is a kind of way that we get overexcited, right? Oh, this is finally, it's going to be the whole answer to everything. And some part of us probably is skeptical of that, right? And so, and there's a sort of a divinity and a distortion on both sides. It's like to hold back a true and natural enthusiasm for something will block, creation and the flow of the life force, to sort of intensify it. There's one lecture about intensity as an obstacle to, enlightenment, and so to intensify it and make it, sort of the be all and end all, right? So we're, I guess, always in this kind of like balance of two-ness, we're finding the difference between the polarizing and the actual unification of the two sides. So yeah, and there's this, it's a kind of, see if you can feel into this sort of what he calls the superstitiousness, right? And he said that, if we can find the voice that says, I dare not believe in the good, it may not happen. So, see, it is sufficient to ascertain no more than this voice, this word you speak into yourself, right? So, he's saying that this is a creative word, and so in a way we're going to manifest obstruction to our desire, to the good that we desire, right? To the good that we would want to bring and bring forth. So he says the superstition of pessimism begins as a superstitious, destructive playfulness. But when you get lost in its very painful effects, you may really believe what you first assumed as a safety measure, right? It's kind of like, oh, let me take this a little light. I won't make it too important. I'll kind of take it lightly, right? So in some sense, it's kind of a safety measure, right? But then when we deny the fullness of it, the positive, or even, are fearful of and believing in the worst, in a way to appease the gods, as it were, then it becomes destructive. So, and I don't know if you recognize that, but I have felt that before, and seen it in others, where we sort of deny our longing, or we, there's some sense of, appeasing the gods, right, in this superstitious negativity that we carry. And maybe, maybe some of that might mean, like, well, we try not to be proud like the gods, we humble ourselves, or whatever, but it's not true humility in that sense, right? It's really, this destructive self-negation. And so we don't understand the power of such thoughts. And it's really not such a game, it has consequences. So the power of this game needs to be made conscious. It can apply to many things in your life. When you have an illness, it may apply to the healing. When you find yourself alone and unloved, you may playfully, safely, as you think, express the belief that it will always be that way. When you lack funds or a fulfilling profession, you say unto yourself, I had better believe it must be this way, so maybe then it can come to me unexpectedly. It is though you hope for some idealized parental figure to assuage your doubt, to come forth and tell you, no, my child, it is not that bad. It's all going to be wonderful. And, there's a way that, this kind of feeling of, safety, like to express the belief that, it's just kind of always going to be that way. It's like it takes a risk, right? It takes a risk to go out beyond the known, or out beyond the pattern and the dynamic, or out beyond the image that we have of life, of ourselves, all of that. So this is part of, what blocks this is that, the fear, and the risk that's involved. And it seems like it's, the superstition of pessimism is the safe way, is the way to keep from being too surprised or shocked or disappointed or heartbroken if it doesn't happen. Does that make sense? So it's sounding like this is a lecture that doesn't like completely resonate with people in the usual way, like recognizing in their lives, how it is. And is that what this is? Do we need some, way to kind of get into seeing how it is in our own life, or are you just kind of taking in this, thing on a conceptual level that seems maybe useful, and still working to integrate it all. Let me know how is this lecture landing for people? Anybody want to speak to it?
Well, I can jump in real quick. The thought just came up. The universe is benign, so it's positive. So, and I get that, and it's really a hopeful feeling, actually. But it gets confused with the actions or the events of everyday life on the planet, and I get my mind mixed up in the ego around wanting things that are good and are good for me, or luxuries or whatever, confused with that energy of the benign universe. And so that's kind of what just pops into my mind. I mean, kind of the Buddhist, and I think the Pathwork, one of their sayings is, well, wow, this new $1,000 came to me. What? Wow, I'm feeling good. This is really good. And the Buddhist response is, well, maybe, and then the other thing, if it's like it's really bad, or you break your leg or something like that, well, this is really terrible. And of course, the same response is maybe. And so I get that construct, and I struggle with the construct then also of the universe being benign, which is very hopeful at the same time. So it's caught between the ego and the spirit world, kind of. So it's a challenge for me. So.
Right. And there's this, it's part of this dynamic, again, I think what you're speaking to, Dick, around the active and the receptive, right? And so, the Buddhist, spirituality and a lot of spirituality is like, surrendering, accepting what is, not becoming attached to something that, your own want or your own, demand or whatever. So, there's this kind of truth that we live in the field of time, it's like, we're learning sort of to flow and trust with this benign universe, even though maybe what is happening, like you said, doesn't always appear to be benign, right? We break a leg, but who knows, we'll have to see where it goes. And the greatest things sometimes are way more problem than they're worth. And, almost everything has both sides, right? That happens. But then on the other hand, the guide also all the way through the lectures does kind of bring in a whole other sort of more Western understanding, where desire is a part of the journey and a part of not something to just suppress or deny. It's like there is a way to learn to be co-creators, right? To awaken, the higher self, right? And our desire for manifesting, the higher self. And part of that is also, the higher self's ability to surrender to what is and not be attached. But, at some level, we don't want to do anything like, like he says here, this spirit of emotional manipulation, right? That's like a demand, right? And we were talking about the real and the false needs from before. And the guide's always saying that, we need to ask for our needs, right? But we have to truly ask for them, which means that, it's if somebody says, no, thank you, I can't meet your needs or whatever, I can't do it right now, that we feel like, we'll survive, it's not something that, we can't give them space for their own free will here and their own following their own needs, and trusting that, if they can't meet them, the universe will meet them in some way through ourselves or someone else, right? So when we get into the sort of that demand place, that's part of where I think we miscreate or whatever as well. And so maybe we're kind of trying to hold ourselves back from that, when we think not to want too much, right? Not to desire something more, or feel our own inner like desire for what life, right? For what did we come here to experience life, to live this journey, this particular, earth walk, in this particular body with these particular genes and these particular life experiences, et cetera, et cetera. And we came here to be, the mostly who we really are, otherwise, if we're just becoming who somebody else wants us to be or something like that, I think that doesn't sort of make sense, like this is for each of us to do our best with. Our responsibility can be seen as our, ability to respond to what is, right? Our creative, will, right? Rather than our forceful will, like our skillful will, and our way of dancing with what is. I've been reading some of Adyashanti lately, and I really like his book, Emptiness Dancing, right? And who are we really if we could be, just present in that emptiness dancing, and the fullness of life, the sacredness of life, the power of life, the true, I don't know, sort of this sacredness and, beauty and completeness that would be here, that we're sort of numbed out to most of the time. Our sensory experience in the now, could be a kind of mystical opening and awakening, but I think sometimes we think, oh, that would kind of blow me away. I have to stay here in my sort of labels of what is so that I can control it all. So there's so much more that, the guide is pointing to that's, possible for, for us to experience and to unfold. And the goal in some ways in the pathwork is, to activate the greater consciousness within each of us. And then perhaps from that level, we can move forward and help heal the earth and come out of our duality. And in this way, it really is activating the, what's also sort of this unitive consciousness, this other people are calling it Christ consciousness, this true, reality that sees everything and knows everything as interconnected, and as ultimately I am another yourself, we're all one from the one being, the one consciousness. But it's difficult when we're here in incarnation, we're all so different, and we're all, reacting to a shrinking world and maybe more difficulties in life with COVID and everything else, more challenges and lack of sort of seeing how to go forward in the future. I know many young people trying to find their way right now, right?
Darlene, I kind of, when I was reading this lecture, I kind of got the feeling that what the guide's talking about, a superstitious attachment to pessimism, is like a safety net against disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of the way it landed on me.
Yeah, no, well put. That's, I think, exactly, at least it's one major piece of it,
And it's tied in, I think, to faith. I mean, there was one passage in the one paragraph or sentence where he says, it is your choice which one of the many roads you wish to travel. The road of defeatism, denial, negative expectation, or the road of faith in the beautiful unfoldment of limitless possibilities that is the innate nature of life. These possibilities are anchored in your own soul. So suppose I garner up, a certain degree of faith, and I point my compass in that direction, and then I get disappointed by something. I can always fall back on this superstitious attachment that I might have to pessimism, you know?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I knew it all along, never would, like
Yeah,
kind of
right,
soften the blow. Yeah.
exactly. Why did I expect to be rewarded? I knew I was never going to be rewarded.
And yet, can you see how if, like
In
what you
my
said,
life, in my personal life, this happens with investments.
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That was the
Me too.
closest I could, that was the closest I could come to a real life, situation for me.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, maybe other people like, what seems to kind of have a pattern of not working out for you
Right.
in life, or you know, creating disappointment. That might be also another way to access your own superstition of pessimism, right?
And of course, another way to look at it, I would think, is, or at least for me, it's shifting into, well, is there a lesson here for me? Is there a growth opportunity here? And allow it to unfold as opposed to try to force it. But usually there is, including investments, because I've got lots of craziness going around investments right now. And yeah, so our relationships or anything, our health, our break a leg or whatever. Like, well, there's, I'm more and more anyway, not 100% for sure, but just like, I have to cuss it out to begin with. And then eventually it shifts into, well, let's see if there's some, benign universe here. There's some lesson that'll bring me into a higher or better, I don't know, whatever. I don't know what it is until it is.
Right. And it is kind of like that, this is the seeking, I think, of the shift into, I've been listening to Paul Selig. He's another channel that I think has some interesting things to say from the guides, right? So, but one of the things he talks about is sort of this, shift out of 3D consciousness, which is the duality, which is the polarity, which is the, sort of defensive or, negative, and into what he calls the upper room, right? And into sort of accessing this perspective of the same experience, but held within the light of the Christ consciousness. And so, and from there, oftentimes, you do see, sort of the underlying, purposes for it, or, what the teaching is, or, like you said, how it can, help illuminate something, within us. And it does so in a way that doesn't cause pain and judgment, right? But just, gently, awakens the heart again towards, the whole life force, right? Both the thing that we might have, longed for and lost, so we can feel our own grief. We can hold ourselves, in what we wanted and didn't work out, but also that, we can open to the possibility and let the flowing of that grief, so that, it can be like, we can then see, well, maybe it has this whole other meaning that we just didn't know about. We were attached to this one way, right? And so then we kind of let the grief happen, and then we open, and then oftentimes that lifts into this other perspective, where all of a sudden you see, a different way that it's actually illuminating or healing or informing something within you. So yeah, it's that benign universe always talking to us in a way, and really wanting to help us expand and grow and go beyond sort of the suffering of the duality and the polarities of things. So good example. And again, there's just ways that we probably don't realize. So just an invitation to kind of pay attention to just the thought forms that come to you, especially around, areas where you're frustrated or struggling. So it says here, without knowing it, when we're sort of in this negative space, of expectation, we dictate into our soul a belief that then create the circumstances that prove it. And then we forget that we had started this game in a spirit of superstition, or perhaps in a spirit of emotional manipulation. And you become so involved in what you have unwittingly created that you really begin to believe that the negative is the reality. So what started out as a superstitious safety measure gradually becomes belief on another level of your consciousness. And the belief creates the reality, and you stay in exactly that position. So I don't know, I've been working with this a lot because things are up, but I go way back, in my life to sort of the fear that I have of, well, is humanity gonna, get through this whole time, right? So I do feel like, always living with the end times and the change, earth changes and the, environmental destructiveness and, all of that. We grew up in this in a way, right? And so in some sense, I feel almost like that I have my own superstition of pessimism, around, where we're going as a planet. And I challenge myself with that because I certainly do not want to be creating, right, a limited option there, or, just adding more doom and gloom into, this thing. So, but, there's this, it's hard to kind of break out of. So whenever anything negative happens, there's this kind of like, well, I knew it all along. We were never going to be able to get this turned around or get it, taken care of, or, make a difference in the corporate reality. We'll never, wake up to, helping out, all of these assumptions and negative superstition, right? Or negative beliefs that are sort of damning, certain parts, certain things that I would say responsible. And so that's the other thing that Paul Selig talks about, is like what we damns us, right? And so I think that it's a kind of, way that I'm working with my own self, right now, because it's hard, there's a lot of shaking and a lot of difficulty, to not fall into sort of the negative expectation that we're all gonna just go down the drain, or, how in the world can humanity ever figure this one out? We've tried it we were watching a bunch of movies on, I guess, the History Channel or something on the Roman Empire, and my husband was saying, see, it's like we've just been doing the same thing all along, never changes, right? So but then there are other good signs. So then he says,
Darlene, sorry,
yeah,
I'm
go
just
ahead.
going to interrupt
Yeah,
you
go
there
ahead.
for a second. I'm curious as to why you chose this lecture. Is it because you're feeling this doom and gloom inside of you, or?
At the time, yeah, I mean, it's shifted some, right? And I've been working with it, but yeah, and other people that I'd been working with as well, were kind of like, I was seeing it in other people as well around me. So, yeah. And so, and sometimes, it may not fit everybody, or, may not be the best one, but certainly, I feel like I have been working with this myself.
Okay. I don't know about your part of the world, but here, these last few days, we've had a tiny glimpse of spring, like the trees are starting to wake up, and things are starting to move energetically. And whenever that happens, I always think about you, because I know you feel these things too. So are you not feeling that where you're living as well, or?
No, there was a shift, but it was a lot, like for a long time, I would say for about 2 months, we were really in a grind, and it was very, very cold, and it was very difficult, nothing, and prices are going up, everything's going wrong, and then, yeah, like with this 222 2022 portal, we were talking about that, I think maybe before you came in, Judy, that, you know, like I felt a very big shift. And I also like kind of shifted some of my creative negativity. Like, you know, like I said, I have this frustration with dealing with figures and facts and kind of all these boxes. And, you know, part of me, you know, just wanted to damn it, you know, and somehow I shifted that and actually found, you know, support, found help, found somebody that loves doing that kind of thing, knows how to do it, you know, and so, you know, there's this kind of opening even on a personal side of things that kind of somehow hadn't been there before for me, right? So you can feel the shift as it happens, and that also, you know, has helped me have time to go out and enjoy the new spring coming on, and, you know, feel that warm air again and stuff. So yeah, I've had a chance to be outside and finally got all of the tree limbs that had been crashed down in the heavy snow that came. I still haven't got all of them, but in my yard I've got most of them, you know, cleaned up. So it has felt like sort of everything kept falling down and challenging, and sort of like, so now maybe we can shift and glide a little bit with this new energy coming in. And it seems like this, you know, like you said, the spring and the new birth, you know, is what we're hoping happens. And hopefully the same thing with COVID and, you know, just opening, and sort of somehow we have traversed this very deep time that, you know, and coming out the other side now with a little bit of lift under our wings. But again, like we all go through different things at different times. So, you know, if that's not happening for you or exactly, you know, it's fine, you know, and if anybody wants to just, you know, share also, you know, what their experience has been, feel free. Even if it doesn't fit this lecture necessarily, you know, it's like probably the Pathwork will have something to say about it. So, you know, he's talking about, you know, the trickery of the mind that kind of wants to manipulate or, you know, go into this negativity. It lies in the misuse of the power of the word, in the power of your thinking, in the power of your self-indoctrination. So I love that phrase, right? You know, does that make sense to you? Do you know how much you self-indoctrinate? And when you encounter self-deception and you halt and question yourself about its effects upon your life, distance yourself from your life and observe what you are doing and connect with the level of intentionality behind it. The next step will be, quotes, I want to stop this kind of self-trickery. I cannot trick life. I choose to be honest. What I say to myself must be what I really mean on the deepest level of my being. It must correspond to the truth of life. And so this is kind of bringing our consciousness and our intention up, like, and this, the power of the word is this other lecture that's very strong in this, you know, that we need to recognize that these unconscious thought patterns that are just kind of like, well, seems like flotsam and jetsam in our, you know, mentality are creative, and we need to be responsible for them in a way that, you know, we don't usually recognize. And, you know, to pay attention to what we are saying to ourselves, and to ask ourselves, well, is that the whole truth? Is that the ultimate truth? You know, because, you know, oftentimes, you know, we're just kind of sharing something, you know, and maybe, you know, it's true for us in that moment or whatever, you know, but we're representing it in a different way, or we're, you know, using it as a kind of overgeneralization, you know, which is what the image is, you know, that kind of thing. So as you thus counter the habitual trickery of the superstition of pessimism, where it may exist in you, you challenge it with your decision to find a new pathway to your mind's activity. you know, some of what I'm sensing in this discussion here, what is saying, you know, the self-trickery and being honest and corresponding to the truth of life is part of, you know, what the guide is saying about sort of the spiritual laws, right? And, you know, there's a certain, you know, spiritual reality and law of the life force, right? And so when we're, you know, like he talks about impressing soul substance, right, with this belief, with this power of this word, that kind of thing. And, you know, for many, you know, we think very unconsciously about those things. And so basically, a lot of the path is almost examining all of these things in the light of our new higher spiritual inner authority. So the next step is the most crucial one. It may sound very simple. It actually is very simple. However, it may seem to require a tremendous amount of courage. The courage to believe in the good. This is truly one of the abysses of illusion. Without assurances of the outcome, you will have to venture into an unknown land where you believe in the positive. Assert your faith in the ever benign universe. Express the truth that all possibilities exist. This is some of what, you know, I've been challenging with sort of my negative thing, right? You know, it's like, okay, I can easily say, yeah, I knew it all along, you know, here we go back into war or whatever, you know, but, you know, so I want to counteract that with, you know, some faith that, you know, okay, that's been what's happened, but let me express the truth that another possibility might exist. Somehow the unification of all of everybody in this moment, you know, can, you know, change the course of things, or maybe we're learning, or, you know, so I can, you know, trust that somehow, even if we do go to war, you know, that there's a way that that's what's necessary, and how to lead us beyond where we are now, so that, you know, again, it can be an affirmation rather than a negation. It's your choice which of the many roads, and this is what Frank was reading, you wish to travel: the road of defeatism, denial, negative expectation, or the road of faith in the beautiful unfoldment of limitless possibilities that is the innate nature of life. These possibilities are anchored in your own soul. There is nothing that you cannot realize. There's nothing you cannot experience if you truly give yourself to it. Remove the anchor that holds you back from this flowing expansion. Allow the involuntary processes with their limitless creative possibilities to carry you and bring you to ever new shores of fulfillment. Assert your courageous faith in the best of your inner spirit. The courage lies in bridging the gap between the assertion of the faith until it bears fruit and is realized. So that feels like, you know, part of the trick, right? You know, it's like to stay positive, to stay in that, you know, place of optimism, you know, instead of pessimism, to bridge the gap until it bears the fruit. Because if we go into the negative, that will probably, you know, cause the fruit not to materialize. The temptation to lean on the old superstitious negative beliefs is that you need not invest in a waiting period of uncertainty. And I think that's an important piece too. Anybody have any comments here? Maybe this is a good place to pause for a second and then go into this piece.
I think it's a lot to ask. I don't know if I could do that. You know, my faith that anything is possible, and I don't know, it's a lot to ask. You know, the tarot card of the Fool, you know, the first card of the tarot of the Fool, and he's walking around and he's happy as could be. He's got a little dog dancing with him, and he's ready to jump off a precipice, right? His next step will take him off a cliff. And
Right.
he has faith that the universe will catch him. And I really want to be the fool, but I don't I look at it and I cringe. Like I just don't think I'm there. It's a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the fear, versus the courage, to like fully commit, fully be in life, fully give our yes, and jump off that cliff, and it is, it's a huge thing, and yet, right, not doing that, does it really save us or protect us in any way, right? It's like
All right.
The thing that came up for me when you were saying that is that we create things in our minds. And so when we're willing to be able to believe in the good, and optimism can feel like being exposed or being vulnerable, it can be safer to believe in the cup is half full, because then you expect it, and that can kind of protect ourselves. But when we actually do the opposite, we create that, and once that's created in our minds, the energy, the elemental is now there, and that's where it can be born. So without us doing that, that makes it much harder for the good to be born and burst.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to be on the lookout. I mean, even when it's, sort of just mildly sort of there, we project into it, we see it where, the slightest evidence of it shows up, like somebody is in their own space and may, make a comment that, feels like it hits this wound, right? And we take it personally, even though it may not have been meant personally, right? And go off into, oh, see, I told myself so, there it is again, kind of thing. So, yeah, it's very much, around in ways that we probably don't see and recognize as much as it's, active. So, yeah, it just feels like it's a good thing to highlight a little bit and begin to pay attention to just notice where that is for you in this time right now, because I think we really are at a time where it's kind of like potential for manifestation, this crossing over from this 3D polarized, part into this new 5D reality and possibility. Like we need to have that yes, and that faith and that courage and that, kind of leap into the unknown, but in a positive way right now. And I think the more people on the planet can hold that energy, the better, chance that we'll have of finding our way forward. So, continuing with the lecture, the temptation to lean on the old superstitious negative beliefs is that you need not invest in a waiting period of uncertainty. And, this is a one that's kind of interesting because, we really don't like not knowing, right? And being, the guide says in another lecture, that we really could have patience if we knew the end result was going to be forthcoming for certain, right? But when we don't know, then we have impatience, and there's this kind of forcing current or this anxiety, or so I think that's a part of, we would rather than hang out in that not knowing uncertainty, it's easier to say, it's not going to happen, because that closes the door, right? And we made our decision for ourselves, right? So we don't have to hope or keep the door open or, wait in that unknown place yet. On the other hand, you speak the negative belief and it occurs, you have the questionable certainty of immediate results that you are so keen on. So hold on. So we're talking about, that you don't want to invest in the waiting period of uncertainty. So you speak the negative belief, and that occurs, and you have the questionable certainty of immediate results, but it's the certainty that you won't get what you want, right? On the other hand, the journey to faith in the possibilities of positive unfoldment requires a growing period, a ripening. This is necessary simply because your mental processes, which have been so accustomed to negative beliefs, have to readjust themselves so they can take root in the new land of beauty and abundance. You are changing from one land of inner being into another, establishing new roots and new growth. A period of gestation is necessary that requires the same kind of faith inexperienced gardeners possess, sowing seeds and waiting for plants to sprout without ever having seen the process work. It is the same with you. Your courage lies in believing in the best your innermost being has to offer and in what life has to offer. That assertion of faith is a substantial step that needs to be reinforced. Now, my friends, here is a pitfall I wish to warn against. The courage to believe in positive life unfoldment can very easily be confused with wishful thinking. And I think this is often what we're kind of balancing and pulling back against in this superstition of pessimism. There's a part of us that really wants to just, be engaged in wishful thinking. There is a subtle and yet very distinct difference between wishful thinking and a virile faith in the positive. You all indulge very easily in wishful thinking. Then, to be realistic, because you already know the disappointing results of wishful thinking, you revert into the superstition of pessimism. Let us be very clear about the difference between wishful thinking and the realism of positive belief. There is one very distinct, clear, simple, and important factor that will simplify matters for you in order to distinguish between them. Wishful thinking is spinning dreams of fulfillment without having to pay a price, without any change of personality or attitude or approach or thinking or feeling or acting or being. You daydream that this or that desirable fulfillment will magically and gratuitously come your way without any investment in life and the process of creation, without contributing to the evolutionary process by committing to your purification. Wishful thinking is a passive dreaming in which you hope against hope that something will happen to you that is desirable and that does not require you to remove the very block that prevents the desirable event or state. The less you invest in the effort that could make desirable events or states a reality, the less you believe in their actual manifestation, and the more you justify the superstition of pessimism. The less desirable your life becomes, increasingly your wish to escape from it by spinning daydreams that substitute for reality. This consumes a lot of creative energy that could be invested in real living and fulfillment. Daydreams are just the other side of the superstition of pessimism. So does that make sense? Do people know others if they don't know this in themselves, that they recognize this sort of daydreaming, sort of inability to manifest as well, right? Sometimes we don't always know, what exactly to do. I can remember, many years where I was sort of still trying to manifest this, work and, my retreat and that kind of thing, that I also felt like would bring up my superstition of pessimism, and oftentimes I would, feel like I'm doing everything that I can possibly think of, to know what to do or to activate or to claim. It was hard to really understand and get to the bottom of it. And, sometimes, it's like, we just have to go through this kind of creative emptiness, this process, that's waiting. Like we can sow our seed, we can prepare the soil, we can, even water the ground, but, for the seed to grow, it's something deeper. It's something, in the, divinity of the life force that is beyond our individual outer wills, right, to make happen. And so we have to trust, and we have to, accept also sometimes when, somehow the seed doesn't grow, and then keep opening to, learning more, to, holding the faith, trying and going inside for that inner purification, So you could accomplish the very thing you daydream about, consuming a tremendous amount of energy and mischanneled creativity, if only you made a total commitment to life and self. And we really don't realize how much that matters, right? This commitment to life and self. And it doesn't even have to be, anything that we're actively doing, but it does help also to give some active expression to it, right? But it's a feeling inside of the desire to give our best to both, which are really one. And you fail to realize the daydreams. When you fail to realize the daydream, your disappointment reinforces the superstition of pessimism. And what was begun as a game then reinforces the negative belief. And the vicious circle accelerates, and you find it ever more difficult to extricate yourself. You swing back and forth from the superstition of negativity to the wishful daydream. And the more you indulge in the wishful daydream to escape from the negativity, the less you can truly experience beauty, fulfillment, abundance, love, joy, peace, and excitement. Wishful daydreams are often spun by a diminished ego rather than by the desire that comes from your higher self, your inner spirit. In these dreams, a diminished ego seeks a false medicine against its own underdevelopment. For example, rather than visualizing yourself in a productive vocation, joyfully and meaningfully contributing to life, or visualizing your success and abundance for the sheer enjoyment of the fruits of your labor as a valid expression of life, you dream of yourself as a great person in order to impress others, perhaps your family, or those who have slighted you. Even in these ego gratifications, however, the original facets of true value are contained. Your dignity is a reality that you look for and often displace, confusing it with the petty pride of the limited ego. The true value of your inner spirit aims for rich fulfillment of love, abundance, friendship, communication, even for recognition and respect. But in a daydream, it all comes in a fairy tale manner that does not really convince you. So of course, you cannot believe in it. Find a level where you also still indulge in the superstition of your negative beliefs. Is somebody going to speak there? And pause. Thought I heard somebody. So you can pursue this thought and discover yourself hoping in a very subtle way that someone will come along and give you fulfillment gratuitously without any effort on your part, without your removing the obstruction to the fulfillment or even attempting to see that they lie within yourself. Ascertaining these random fleeting thoughts and making them concise will allow you to see their absurdity and help you to give them up. You will realize that abundance is available only to the degree you wish to squander yourself into life, giving as generously of your inner riches to this whole process as you wish to receive from life's abundance. So take that in for a minute, and feel like, where is your, fullness of a squandering yourself into life, your wish to do that, right? Giving as generously of your own inner riches to this whole process. And notice, all of us, I think, feel inside where we hold back, right? And many places where we might hold back, or, circumstances that we imagine, I'll give myself as long as, it's qualified, it's conditional, right? I'll squander myself as long as. So, you can explore that. Anybody find anything interesting there to comment on? Quiet group this evening.
Oh,
I can, sorry, go ahead, Dominique.
no, Judy, it's okay. I can go next.
I can see where there's an aspect of my professional life that I really hate. It's the part of my job that I hate the most, and somehow it's become much more predominant in the kind of work that I'm doing these days. And it really takes away the joy of life. And I can see how I'm turning away from this saying yes to life, saying yes to my work, saying yes to the joy, and squandering myself in life. I can really see how I'm blocking myself because I resist this part that I don't enjoy. I don't want to do it, so therefore I can't be happy. And right, I put up all these excuses to not be happy, or not at least commit to being present fully while I'm working.
Right.
So yeah, I can feel into this. This is interesting.
Yeah, good. And I think there are things that it's really hard, to say that yes to, or commit, or give of ourselves to. But even when I was in my own, resistance with the tax situation and some other things that, we're dealing with, with this new business and stuff, it was, like an awareness. There was no way I would even begin to get through it if I could not really do my best to say yes, right? And so I would have to work to get there every day, right? But it was a kind of inner willingness, and a prayer at the same time to find my way through that, or out of that, or, into, something, and an awareness of, more and more the, the pain, the stress, and so, in that, just being present to that situation fully, it had this opportunity to find its way, to resolve itself and find a way into a better circumstance. But exactly, good example. So Dominique, did you want to?
I was just thinking about the dynamic of only giving it with the condition. You know what I mean? I think that's what the last thing that you were saying was like, you can't do it unless XYZ. And I feel for myself a resistance right now with life, because I feel like I'm going through a time that is hard, and I am in uncertainty in a lot of ways. And it's like, without that certainty, I've found that my energy level is lower, and I feel the presence of, like, I'm not depression, but like that energy is there, like ready to be had if I want to sink into it, because without certainty and without the future that I wanted, there's this like listlessness that I feel. And so it's like, I'm usually very, energetic, and I feel a lot of vibrance normally. And I was noticing in the last few days that what I'm feeling now has to do with the fact that I don't know what's going to happen. And so it's almost like, what am I striving for, or what is there to be happy for? And I know it's an illusion, but it's just been interesting to kind of observe.
Yeah, good, good. And I think it is difficult. I mean, when, sort of when we have a goal or we know where we're going, or, the things are kind of, sort of in the expectation of the timelines and stuff, but everything is so unclear right now and it does feel like in some ways that is part of the, big teaching, is like how to function when we don't know where we're going, or we don't, have the certainty that we had, or, the sense that we can make plans, and somehow have them come to fruition. And, that could even be a kind of, superstition of pessimism. I don't know. I mean, part of me has always looked at that as, no, the universe just wants to keep shaking me up from thinking, making my plans, or having like too much rigidity and that kind of thing, and becoming flexible and trusting and seeing what, comes my way and everything. But, there is this, sort of difficulty of where we seem to be going now, in everything that I've sort of read in the pathwork as well as other spiritual things, says that, this not knowing is a kind of development that is actually a positive thing in some way, right? That if we have this picture in our mind, or we have this expectation or whatever, that there's this kind of co-creation or cooperation with the universe. So there's our desire or our, longing, and then, there's this dance where if we try to make it happen with our outer will, oftentimes we get in the way of the way the universe might bring it to us in an even better, way somehow. So I think we're being sort of worked with right now in letting go and still holding faith, or still trusting, or still staying open, and that there is another step. And sometimes that other step is, not doing anything right now, or maybe there's nothing to do. And that, is a challenge for sure. I understand that listlessness, or that kind of, sense of not knowing. Oftentimes I find my flow when that comes up, by just finding something to do, right? So it might even be, cleaning the house, or doing something in the yard, or, like finding something that you feel like there's some forward movement or positive movement that, can begin to activate. And then it seems sometimes easier to do, to stay in that flow and do more. But it is kind of like just moment to moment. What do I want to do now? And what do I want to do now? And there's nothing, in the long term, that when we're going for, there's not necessarily a goal. But I think this is probably an interesting thing to explore, and maybe another way that we're trying to learn how to function in the world.
Mm.
So, I don't know if that helps.
No, it did help, because a lot of what's been happening is just kind of, well, there's two things. One, I just read one of the lectures where the guide was talking about disorder and putting things into order, and how disorder in our like physical life is a reflection of like something within the mind. And so I've been inspired to like clean house and go through the closets and kind of just feeling into, like what is, like what you're saying, the next thing to do. But I found as I'm organizing a junk drawer or something like that, there seems to be some sort of energy movement and some space cleared. And
Yeah.
it really was resonating with like taking care of things as they come up, instead of, when we say we don't have the energy, we're actually taking more from ourselves. And what you just said, I don't know how the two clicked, but it clicked.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. That's it. So the very thing that is your inner richness can create myriad kinds of fulfillment. And I think this is another thing that the guide speaks of a lot. You know, it's like we look like the child for the fulfillment to come to us from outside. And he's saying that we have to, you know, activate our own inner richness, you know, to create many kinds of fulfillments within. And when we withhold our inner richness and yet strive for results through the superstition of pessimism and wishful daydreaming, you know, we ignore the inexhaustible wells of ourself, which could enrich every minute of our life. So, you know, this is sometimes a challenge, of course. You know, I know one of the things I hate is standing in line, you know, in stores or whatever, you know, and so I used to have a job that I would have to do that somewhat, and I would, you know, literally get so frustrated and impatient with everything. I would have to kind of challenge this, you know, myself to really stay out of that and enrich, you know, like find a way to be interested or, you know, shift out of that negative, you know, frustrated energy and into, okay, so what's here before me that I can appreciate, that I can enjoy, you know, you know, what's in myself, you know, maybe I could just close my eyes and breathe and feel, you know, the inner inexhaustible wells of richness inside of myself. Much more fulfillment, happiness, pleasure, and abundance exists in your life, but in those areas where you are still blocked, you reject pleasure because it feels uncomfortable. So this is another way, you know, that we, you know, don't receive what we want and kind of feeds the superstition of pessimism. At least you are now fully aware of this, which is obviously immeasurably important. This message may help you to make further connections so that you will eliminate all further obstructions to real happiness rather than dream about gratification. You will truly become capable of transforming a negative belief because you can see it as a trick on a very subtle level. Give up that trick. Have the courage of positive belief in your own richness and of the positive intentionality to give of this richness to the best of your ability. You will create the courage necessary to have faith in the best that life can ever be. My dearest friends, you in this community of human beings are fulfilling an all-important noble task. The creative processes of the universe depend on every individualized entity. Every tiniest step of goodwill within you, every intent to be in truth, to face the truth, to confront the worst in you and to transform it into its original best, adds to the great reservoir of creative forces that flow and push themselves forevermore as manifestations into all of life. Each step in your growth aids not only your own happiness and fulfillment, important as this is, but it is also a powerful force akin to nuclear energy generated by your community and other such nuclei that spreads and multiplies so that the Christ force gains an ever greater impetus. So we go into a Q&A period here. We can talk about it a little bit or see what's there. We'll continue on, but let me just pause. That was a very beautiful, powerful, you know, reading there. Any comments or? I guess we lost Jacob, huh? And also maybe somebody else was with us too. So does that feel, you know, like inspiring or resonant inside of you at all? So the question says, this lecture seems to apply to my life very much. It also seems almost miraculous. The business venture I started looks as if it's going to be a success, and I have blocked so much of the positive, yet something very good is happening. Now that it is happening, I feel that I am going a lot into my ego, and I find myself thinking that I'm better than others. I would like you to comment on this. This is, of course, how you destroy. What you can do when you discover yourself in that way of thinking is to very simply and firmly, yet without pushing effort, formulate another thought. The thought might be, I do not wish to set myself above others. If a part of me desires this, I do not want it. I pray to the divine forces within me to help me create another kind of attitude and therefore another reality. If I want to be better than others, I must also feel undeserving to get the slightest fulfillment. I am not better than others, and I am not worse than others. All human beings are wonderful manifestations of divinity. One flower is not better than another flower. One bird is not better than another bird. The mountain is not better than the sea. The pine tree is not better than the oak. Think of yourself and other people in those terms and assert your goodwill to let others be their best. Then you can let yourself be your best, so you can truly enjoy the fruits of your efforts and feel deserving of them. So that was nice, I thought. Kind of touched places, I think, where, we all, have that kind of situation where when things really do start manifesting, or we start feeling like, it's happening, right? That then we're afraid that it's going to give us a big head or a big ego or whatever. So that was I thought, a beautiful meditation there. So next question. All my life, it seems I have done exactly what the lecture was all about because I didn't want to deal with disappointments. But I also felt that I must have it. I can't bear not having it. I was afraid not only of failure, but the meaning of failure. It is something that I was not meant to have, or what? I found the superstition safe, but I see how it has limited me. Yeah, and that's a good, so we're afraid of what the meaning of the failure is, right? Answer. The most productive attitude about the possibility of not getting the wish fulfilled in this particular form would be somewhat like the following. If such and such a desire is not fulfilled now, I have the courage to confront myself and find out the meaning. The meaning is not something bad, nor does it imply that you are undeserving or that there is something terrible that you need to fear. It may mean many different things. It may mean that there are certain obstructions within you that you need to know about, not just for the sake of this particular fulfillment, but even more importantly, for the sake of your total unfoldment as an entity, so as to become fully unified and whole. You have intelligence, openness, and goodwill within you to learn. This can be a glorious experience. If what you desire does not happen now in this particular way, what will make you happy and whole will happen in another way that may possibly turn out better. Pursue the truth of your potential and state. I can take a momentary disappointment and make it a stepping stone. I need not fear that it may not be now in this particular way. There are many ways. With this attitude, you will create a relaxed inner climate so that attaining the result will not be a question of do or die. Such a demand creates an unbearable tension that is often a direct block to the fulfillment of the desire. A relaxed and growth-producing attitude would let you off the hook and make it possible for you to believe in the best. You will open the doors to finding out a great deal about yourself. This will be infinitely richer than the mere fulfillment of your wish could ever have been. In reference to one word you used that I'm struggling with, can you amplify what the elements of courage are? and where courage might be felt represented in the body? Answer: yes, the elements of courage are the ability and willingness to experience pain or disappointment and learn from it and use it as a threshold. That is courage. It is courage to risk all that rather than stand still and have the safety of a little back door open, never venturing forth completely into a new situation. That is courage. To love is courage, because the loved one may not always respond according to your desires and self-will. To give is courage, because the petty heart in its negativity still believes that when you give, you will lose, and no one will give you anything in return. It is courage to risk finding out that your negative beliefs may not be true. It takes even more courage to not be discouraged. You feel courage in all of your body as you feel love in all of your body. For courage is an essential part of love. Every cell, every pore vibrates and resonates with every divine attitude that can possibly allow to express itself through your mind, your will, your soul, and so through your entire body. I will close this meeting with a prayer that the God in you expresses. As I have done once before, I ask you to listen to your inner God and hear the words that resonate within you. As I say the words, pick up the echo within. This will help you to attune your listening inner ear to the voice of God, filling you with messages such as these. So go ahead and try to go into this and let that echo happen. I am working through you. I am in all your thoughts. If you wish to hear me, I am in all you see. If you wish to see me, I am in all the words you speak. If you wish me to express through you, I am in all your actions, if that be your commitment. And as I am, and as I manifest through you, you rediscover life in new terms. You will see that life is a glorious oneness in which there is nothing to fear. What need you fear if you discover me? What need you fear if you identify with me? Know that you are God. As such, you can never die. Give that which is you now in your thinking, in your being, in your perceptions. Give that to me. As you give yourself to me, so much must you be eternal. Listen for a minute into yourselves while I stay with you. You are richly blessed, my beloved friends. So in some ways, this lecture is really calling forth a lot of higher self, right? Pulling us out and giving us some tools and some things to remember and to, resonate, recognize this deeper truth inside of this, reality that's so much greater than our little mind can possibly even conceive of, right? And it feels like somehow now is the time, like now we're being called forth, we have to awaken, we have to, bring forth this consciousness more as fully as possibly can. And like you said, it's not only for ourselves, but for the entire world. So any last comments, questions?
That was beautiful.
Yeah, just thanks, Darlene. That was really nice.
Okay, so yeah, good to see everybody again.
Thank you,
Then too.
darling.
So
Good night.
stop the share and let us
Thanks,
see.
Charlie. Yeah, it was very good. So thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody. Good night, Judy.